Sonic Adventure 2 is undoubtedly one of the best and most beloved Sonic games of all time. But why exactly is that? Releasing in 2001, in celebration of the franchise's 10-year anniversary, this game received very favorable reviews, generally praising the multiple playstyles, beautiful visuals for its time, and of course, its iconic soundtrack.
To me, I'm just gonna creep down in Pumpkin Hill. I got to find my lost speed.
Many even considering it to be the Dreamcast swan song, releasing only months before the end of the console's life cycle. I as well have always had nothing but exceptional things to say about this game. But as I was gearing up to purchase it once again, I remembered something. Or better yet, I couldn't remember. Why exactly did I used to love this game so much? It's so easy to just say, yeah man, best Sonic game ever. But then when it came down to making an actual video essay on the topic, I had very little recollection of the stages and also very scarce details of the plot. I mean, I knew this is where Shadow was introduced, and then there's the bridge segment, and the giant lizard, and, of course, convicted felon Sonic. But that's about it. So, that being the case, I came here with an almost blank slate and a goal to determine if this game is truly one of the best the Sonic franchise has to offer, why so many people praise this game, how it improved upon the groundwork that was laid out in Sonic Adventure 1, and also discussing the ins and outs of the game as a whole. Now, typically I would give a brief rundown of the main menu screen before jumping right into the campaign, but most of the good stuff is actually unlocked after playing through the main story, so I've decided to touch on that a bit later in the video. But what I will say is that intro music does, still to this day, go hard. I believe other versions have an opening cutscene montage. Unfortunately, mine did not, which was slightly disappointing. But what did not disappoint, however, is the campaign. After selecting single player, you'll notice that there are two options, as opposed to the previous game's 6, those being Hero and Dark. I do like this format quite a bit better actually, as it does allow the story to be more cohesive, at least from what I've experienced, giving you more of the story without having to bounce back and forth between the different campaigns all the time. And once you select your playthrough, life flourishes to the game. And assuming you choose the hero side first, the iconic City Escape will be your introduction to Adventure 2. Immediately, I feel a rush of nostalgia flowing to me as I see Sonic basically escape from prison, break off a piece of the airplane he's being held captive on, and uses that as a freaking snowboard. So iconic. This entire level is freaking awesome, and it's what people rightfully expect when they think of the adventure era Sonic. Doing sick tricks off of ramps, destroying several people's vehicles in the process, grinding on rails like you're playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 without the skateboard, running from a giant truck, and last but not least, I mean, when you think of opening stages in a video game, it is very difficult to not put this at least in your top 5. You just have to be going out of your way to hate at that point. However, once I was over the initial hype of City Escape, and I got into some of the less thrilling parts of the game, I have to be honest here. For a while, I was really doubting if my love for this game still held up after all these years. And don't get me wrong, it's not that I was having a bad time, or even that I disliked these portions per se. I just felt like something was missing. You see, I was doing my best not to strictly rely on nostalgia, and it took a while for me to regain that spark. This may come as no surprise, but the Knuckles, Tails, and by proxy the Rouge and Eggman levels didn't really captivate me so much. I don't want to say these levels are the sole cause for me having a staggered enjoyment of Adventure 2, because that's simply not true. But initially, these stages really did slow the game down for me. To start, the idea to change Knuckles' radar so that he needs to find the Emerald Shards in a specific order is kinda stupid. If you don't know already, basically there are 3 emerald shards in each Knuckles and Rouge stage. And there's also a radar on the bottom of the screen that goes off to indicate if you're close to one of the shards. But in this specific entry, it won't go off if you're near the second one and haven't found the first one yet. So you have to find them in a specific order as opposed to the first game where you can find them in any order that you'd like. I mean, it didn't really ruin the game for me in any way, but it just is a weird decision. I mean, who on the team was like, you know those Knuckles stages in the last game? Yeah, let's make them the exact same, just a bit worse. Moving on, the Tails stages were a bit more my speed, I guess, but still kind of tedious. I don't really like the idea of having Tails in a mech instead of having him fly as usual, and it kind of feels weird unlocking a flight power-up or a hover power-up for Tails, as he could just fly. In all honesty though, as flawed as these are, I didn't hate these levels as much as I might be making it seem. I really enjoyed detective-like games, so having to explore and find emerald shards was fun enough, and upon getting close to one, I got a serious adrenaline rush, especially in some of those harder levels where it takes forever to find them. And for the hero side, Knuckles' OST is just straight fire. I mean, the whole game has an awesome soundtrack, but especially that Pumpkin Hill theme, like come on, that goes unreasonably hard. After completing each of these variations at least a few times, and I got to around the midpoint of the game, specifically the pyramid stages, that's when it hit me. This game may be flawed, but it has a real charm to it. Although still having my dislikes, and although the Sonic and Chao levels are undoubtedly the best the game has to offer, having the ability to switch between characters, and by proxy switching through their different playstyles, keeping the game fresh, and also seeing their side of the story was really captivating, especially when I reached the dark playthrough. The level structure is basically the same. Shadow functions as Sonic, Rouge as Knuckles, and Eggman as Tails. They even share similar stages, like Tails and Eggman breaking into the pyramid, although Eggman's breaking into the gun base, and Tails is breaking into what is now Eggman's secret lair. Or Sonic City Escape and Shadow's Radical Highway, functioning as the same area at the same time, as they do meet up after this, just perhaps taking different routes, which I thought was a really cool idea. Also, side note, those Shadow levels are incredible. Not only does he have the coolest and most fun stages, but the way he runs, almost as if he's rollerblading, looks and feels so smooth. Now the story itself and the plot, in my opinion, also really picks up once you start the dark portion. Of course, I didn't start this game expecting some god tier writing, but a lot of parts left me very confused. Like, how does Eggman come about the Eclipse Cannon? What exactly is Rouge's role in all of this? Who even is Shadow?
You're not Sonic. Who are you?
Now this is largely explained in the Dark story, as it not only expands upon many of these plot points, but begins well before the hero story's first stage, allowing you to have a greater understanding of how things fell into place, and clearly defining what each character hopes to achieve in this alliance. The cutscenes in this game are so beautiful, especially for their time, but to play devil's advocate, they do fall victim to the same issues from the original Sonic Adventure. The voices just don't even try to line up with the mouth flaps, and they will speak over one another so often that it's really, really hard to ignore.
What's going on here?
Don't worry, Mr. President. Everything's under control.
But I didn't find this to be a major issue in regard to my personal enjoyment. Just worth pointing out as it's very frequent, and for some I can understand how this may be bothersome. But in contrast, another thing that brought me back around to the game is the multiple pathways your characters can take in certain levels. These don't greatly change your playthrough, but can lead to you finding some useful items, shortcuts, or even longer pathways that can just give you a different route to switch things up. Like Green Forest, where you can choose to jump on top of the platform you're on and grind on the vines. Or City Escape, where you can choose to hit a ramp, do a sick trick, and then light dash all the way over to a loop-de-loop. While venturing off from the main route, it's worth noting that Big the Cat can also be found hidden in every level, which is a really fun bonus to be looking out for. And perhaps I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here, but on a second playthrough, you can also find so many new routes that you didn't have access to originally. This is due mostly to not having come across certain power-ups yet, like the light dash, and also a variety of ways to navigate Tails' pyramid stage. You will also unlock some new power-ups, like Sonic's magic hands, by utilizing the previously not unlocked bounce jump, or Tails' laser, which is not mandatory, but definitely adds to the replayability, especially if you like Tails. But of course, one of the biggest driving factors for the replayability here is the Chao Garden, which can be simply accessed through stage select or by finding the Chao key, which is hidden in Chao boxes throughout every stage. You can also collect animals for your Chao by finding them randomly while exploring, beating enemies, or in a second Chao box, which will also be located in every stage. Upon bringing these animals to your Chao, they will then absorb them. This gives them a boost in stats, which is typically dependent on the type of animal. For instance, a bird type will give them an increase in their flight stats, or some will increase their speed and their ability to swim. Doing this regularly will allow you to customize them to your liking, making them OP in certain minigames, like Chao races. I understand that this is a huge reason why some people hold this game to such a high praise, but I personally have never been a major fan of the Chao Garden. That being said, I do find them to be adorable, don't get me wrong, and I did find a key in almost every level and still visited them very frequently. But it's just not for me, and it didn't really captivate me the same way that it did for a lot of you guys. What did captivate me, however, is the stage selection here. In my opinion, Adventure 2 has some of the best stages in the Sonic franchise. So much so that I kept switching between my favorites, because the next level would be even more appealing. But instead of going through each of them individually, I think I've made a solid lineup here. To start off, let's begin with the hero stages. There are quite a few difficult stages in this campaign. In fact, I found Adventure 2 to be miles harder than the original in a variety of ways, including the obstacles and overall structure of the stages. Now, typically, most difficult doesn't mean bad per se, but in this game, that difficulty isn't always the right kind. In fact, each of the characters' worst stages and hardest, at least in my opinion, come towards the end of the campaign. Well, except maybe Knuckles. Death Chamber nearly made me rage quit. If I had to choose one to be king of bad, I'd have to go with Crazy Gadget, Sonic's second to last stage. What it comes down to is the sheer amount of navigating you have to do because of the gravity system, especially at the later portion, which can be really frustrating and also kind of wonky at times. It doesn't help that there's a vast amount of chaos-like enemies, which for me are the most difficult in the game. And also the inverted controls, which goes hand in hand with the gravity feature. Don't get me wrong, it's not all bad. It does have those little tubes that are reminiscent of the OG Sonic games, which I thought was pretty neat, but it's certainly not one I think to go to on replays just for fun. This segues us into first a few cutscenes in which Sonic tries to sabotage Eggman's plan with a fake Chaos Emerald. Spoiler alert, that doesn't go as planned. We're then led to believe that Sonic is dead due to Eggman shooting him out into space. But thankfully, he's not, because if he was, we wouldn't get one of the best levels in the game. Final Rush. This has to be one of the best stages that I've played in any Sonic game. To start off, it's packed with fast-paced gameplay, an abundance of rails to grind, all comboed with the aesthetic of being in space. Perhaps my favorite aspect though is that it offers so many different routes, often allowing you to choose between up to 3, some being more straightforward than others. Think of it like beginner and advanced slopes when skiing or snowboarding. In fact, I could have made this so much easier myself, but instead I purposely took the more difficult routes, just because they were so much fun to master. Also, there are some really cool skips that you can choose to try if you'd like, and I can't help but think these must have been intentional. Some are more difficult than others, but I couldn't pass them up, no matter how many lives were lost in the process. And while we're speaking on the end of the campaign, beyond this is the final boss and end to the hero, side, Sonic vs. Shadow.
True power of chaos control.
Oh man, I mean, guys, I'm well aware this is iconic. Hell, it's even the first thing that I think of when reminiscing on the game, but I never liked this, not even as a kid. That being said, I don't think any character versus character battle per se are good in Sonic games. In this game, Sonic vs. Shadow, Knuckles vs. Rouge, Eggman vs. Tails are all just not that fun in my opinion.
I did it!
But in contrast, the boss fights against giant-like characters are almost always where this franchise excels. Aside from last story, the pyramid levels actually have the best and most innovative bosses, by far. Egg Golem is super fun to navigate, and King Boom Boo is possibly the most unique Sonic boss that I've ever fought. And it's also pretty difficult too, especially on that last phase, man. He's a speed demon. Moving on to the other side. The Dark playthrough also has some incredible and, as well, some not so incredible stages. This was a difficult decision though, as White Jungle and Final Chase are amazing stages, but I just love Radical Highway. This stage is packed with sick grinding moments like going down a goddamn bridge, high speed loop-de-loops, a bit of explorability, and the scenery here is just so sick. 10 out of 10, one of the best. In contrast, the hardest and worst in this Dark Side campaign, as well as the entire game, if we're being honest, is Mad Space. It's weird because the Knuckles version of the stage didn't really bother me so much, and I actually kind of liked it. So I thought this would be some more of the same. It was not. The map is insanely large, so it takes ages to even come near the first Emerald Shard. And if you use the hints, well, most of the time, they're backwards and stay on the screen for a total of 3 seconds. So good luck deciphering that one. Also, the way they implement the gravity here has me pulling my damn hair out. It is so hard to get anything done. Just trust me, this took me almost a half hour and it is super frustrating. Once you complete all stages in both Hero and Dark stories, you will unlock the last story, and it's a banger. This is where the plot merges together for both sides. We not only get a greater understanding of Eggman's grandfather's convoluted master plan, but we also delve further into Shadow's backstory as he realizes just how conflicted he is about his purpose as the ultimate life form, due mostly to Amy. This is also where Shadow begins to piece together some parts of his memory, as he now realizes that Maria's final wish was for him to actually help save humanity, not destroy it. And on top of that, although hinted at previously, it's officially revealed that Rouge is a government spy.
My boss.
I didn't see that one coming. After a bit of chat and some cutscenes, this newly formed Justice League decided to team up to stop Gerald Robotnik's master plan from coming to fruition, culminating in the final stage, Cannon's Core. Damn, this level is, for a Sonic game, extremely difficult. Each of the characters, at the exclusion of Shadow, will take turns doing their part to secure the W, and if you lose all your lives at any point, you will need to restart the entirety of it. This begins with Tails and Eggman. Although these two are the easiest of the bunch, these levels can still be quite daunting, especially the gravity segments towards the end, which will really test your skills and, in some cases, your patience as well. The Rouge Knuckles levels is where the difficulty really ramps up, as they'll be time-centric and require a bit more strategy. This is true for the Knuckles portion especially, as you have to truly go through tons of trial and error to get this down. It is also very important you get the air necklace prior to this portion of the story, as you'll be underwater for almost the entirety of it. And trust me, running out of oxygen is the last thing you want to have to worry about here. Next, Sonic's portion is a really fun way to end things off. This segment has plenty of really tricky platforming moments, but it still feels like a classic 3D Sonic stage when it comes down to it, even having a really neat sand slide segment at the end. Once completing Cannon's Core, the cast will reunite with a newly reformed Shadow, who will then instruct Sonic and Co. to gather the emeralds, as he deals with the prototype Ultimate Life Form, a giant lizard. Jokes aside, this boss is certainly one of the best in the game. He has 3 unique phases, each having different and more deadly variations of attacks that you'll need to strategically maneuver around. This begins with you dodging some dark energy and then grinding on his retainer. Then around halfway through in the second phase, you'll need to chain homing attacks to gain height, while avoiding any blast. This can actually be fairly difficult, and it's when I officially said to myself, okay, there's no denying it. This game is definitely way more challenging than Adventure 1. Once you finish the rather short third phase of Shadow flying into the life support system, in good old Sonic fashion, it's revealed that Sonic has collected all the emeralds, and we can finally become Super Sonic and now Super Shadow. You would rightfully assume that this would be an awesome battle, and in some respects it is decent and cool to look at, but you're really just alternating between Sonic and Shadow, flying into this thing's boils, navigating your character up and down to avoid projectiles, all while trying to finish this before your rings run out. It's nothing too special or different from other Super Sonic stages, and this is one of the few aspects where I actually like Adventure 1's iteration a little bit better. But that OST though is still a damn banger. They really had the soundtrack on lock in this era. Shout out Crush 40. After defeating Biohazard once again, Super Sonic and Super Shadow fly towards the Eclipse Cannon, using Chaos Control to obliterate it. This leads us to Shadow falling towards the Earth, appearing to blow up in the atmosphere, which is actually a really touching and sad moment. Even knowing that Shadow survives this moment truly had me feeling for Shadow, as he simply had a misconception of what was right and wrong, and in the end, he did choose to do the right thing. Following this, although bringing us to the end of Adventure 2's campaign, there is still a plethora of options for replayability here. Firstly, you could choose to partake in Boss Attack, giving you your choice of playing through the hero bosses, dark bosses, or all of the bosses combined. Next, Kart Race, which is a knockoff of Mario Kart basically. Not much to say about this here. I didn't like the racing segment in the main campaign, and I certainly didn't really like this very much. Although I could see a 2-player version being decent for its time. And that being said, there is a 2-player option here, which could be interesting, although I haven't had the opportunity to try it out just yet, as I don't have a second controller for my PC, but let me know if you guys have, as I've heard pretty good things about it. But the main thing you'll want to do post-game is access Stage Select, where you can replay your favorite levels and also partake in 4 additional missions in each stage, which each grants you an additional emblem. Usually these missions will be simple, like collect 100 coins or finish the level in the designated time. But others, like Find the Lost Chao, can actually be quite difficult, at least from my experience. Beyond this, on the main menu screen, you can find a few different options like leaderboards, where you can see how fast players got through a specific stage, and some of these are absolutely insane. Also, the extras you'd expect are available here, like emblem progress, sound tests where you can play your favorite tracks, bonus video footage, and a basic tutorial, among other things. But with that, all good things unfortunately have to come to an end. But before we do wrap up, let's briefly discuss our general overview of the game. If this is one of the best the Sonic franchise has to offer, why so many people praise this game in particular, and also, is it better than Sonic Adventure 1? Now, I didn't know what to expect when diving back into Sonic Adventure 2. Will I still love it? Will it ruin my nostalgia for the game I once held so highly? And although perhaps it didn't age so well in certain aspects, I can happily say that the spark is still there, and I found a great deal of love and enjoyment in my replay. Although it is much better and smoothed out in comparison to Sonic Adventure 1 in certain ways, I do really believe this game and Adventure 1 and possibly Heroes could benefit to an extreme amount from a remaster or a remake. I mean, they're really missing out on a bunch of sales, and also just play into our nostalgia, dude. We want this. Do I think this is one of the best the Sonic franchise has to offer? That really is difficult to say, but if we're talking top 3, yes, it's one of the best games the franchise has to offer, for sure. And of course, Frontiers has some incredible stages and feels much more smooth and less rushed in comparison. So I can understand why some praise that game, but I actually had a better time playing this than Frontiers. Granted, I have not played any of the DLC yet, and I definitely really liked Frontiers, but there's just something about this game, and I think it also expands to the entirety of the adventure era as well. This is probably a lot to do with the fact that they show love to not just Sonic, which I feel like so many new games just focus on Sonic, right? And it's cool that he's the main character, but we need some attention on Tails, Knuckles, Shadow, Rouge, even Eggman. Let's play as Eggman again. Like, I don't get why it's just all focused on Sonic when these were the games that, I mean, I think sold the best. I could be wrong. I haven't researched that at all. The story, although feeling flawed and a bit silly at times, feels like there was love and actual care put into it. And actually encapsulates what Sonic, at least in my opinion, is supposed to feel like. And I feel like that was lost somewhere along the way. But in short, from the stage selection, character roster, amazing iconic soundtrack, and the Chao Garden, if you are into that, there's at least something that will make this game worth going back to. And that's beyond just nostalgia. Yo, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up, like it, comment below on what you thought of the video, what you want to see next. I read and respond to just about every single comment. I love to read the comments. So subscribe, because I'm trying to hit 1,000. Probably not this year because we got 1 month left. But you never know, dude. This video could pop off. So just subscribe. Peace.